All right. Hi, friends. I am back with now an edition of Social Studies. Everybody in both classes should be watching Chapter 8, Lesson 2, which I'm about to do right now, and answering the questions on your own so that you're prepared for tomorrow. We'll be doing Lesson 3 together, and your test will be on Friday. All right. Lesson 2 is really interesting. It's short, interesting, and Lesson 3, I think, is even more interesting. So remember Theodore Judah in our last chapter, he had this dream, like, let's build a railroad from coast to coast, kind of like the manifest destiny of owning all the land. Now he's like, we need to connect California to the rest of the United States on the East Coast because they're so far apart. And government liked the idea, but they're like, that's billions and billions of dollars that we don't have. So they kept kind of shooting him down. So Judah came up with a new idea. He thought, you know what? If we can get some investors, some really wealthy guys to like invest in this, then they can pay for the big chunk of it. And then the government can just pay for a smaller chunk of it. And how he convinced the investors to be involved in this investment is he said, hey, you're going to invest in this. The railroad's going to make tons of money, but they didn't really know if that was the case. So to sweeten the pot a little bit, he's like, so we're going to do this railroad from coast to coast. And if you invest in this, you guys have part ownership on all the land on either side of the railroad for 10 miles on either side, which means that wherever they do these train stations to stop along the way, they own that land and they can sell houses, they can set up businesses, they can sell the land, can do whatever they want, which again, it was a risk because they didn't know if people would even want the land, but ended up they became wealthy. They became super, super rich because all that land from all the way across the United States, they owned, 4 of them. They owned 10 miles of land on either side of the railroad track. That's a lot of land, right? So they made tons of money, right? Now, they call these guys the Big Four. They're called the Big Four because they had to pay big money to help this railroad happen. And their names are Leland Stanford. Maybe you've heard of Stanford University. Leland Stanford is the one who started Stanford University. Lots of money, right? Charles Crocker, Collins Huntington, and Mark Hopkins. And these 4 guys are called the Big Four. Big money. That's all you have to remember, right? But they still needed more money after the investors. They still needed the government buy-in, and they needed more money to still build it. So Judah took a 90-foot-long map, like a plan, rolled it out in front of Congress, in front of the government, and said, here's the plan. I've got these 4 investors. We need to do this for America. And President Abraham Lincoln is like, I'm in, let's do this. And he signed the Pacific Railroad Act in 1862 saying, we're building this railroad, let's do it. And it's like, well, how are we going to build it? And there was 2 big railroad building companies at the time. There was the Union Pacific Railroad Company and there was the Central Pacific Railroad Company. So he hired both of these companies, gave them a lot of money, and said, let's build this. Instead of just having one and kind of creeping along, they came up with this plan. They're like, one of you is going to start from the middle of the United States, kind of where all the train tracks were already established, but then all that nothingness in the middle. One of you is going to start there, and you're going to go along the mostly flat land, but a whole bunch of nothingness out there. You're going to start this way. And then the other group's going to start from the Sacramento, San Francisco area, and you're going to go up and over the Sierra Nevada and come down, and you guys are going to start building towards each other. And it became this huge race. And what's funny is they started building, and they both were racing, but they didn't even know where the meeting point was going to be. So these guys were building, they're like, yeah, let's get there first. And these guys are building up and over the Sierra Nevada. Let's get there first, but they didn't even know where they were meeting. So the government's like, oh, we better figure out what the meeting point is. And since these guys had to go up and over the Sierra Nevada, they made their meeting point kind of closer to the California side. And these guys, since they kind of had it a lot easier, then they had to go a little bit farther, but it was a lot flatter for them. It wasn't perfectly flat, but a lot flatter. So these guys start building, right? We'll talk about in lesson 3. It was a lot of work. Most people didn't want the job because it was dangerous. They barely got paid any money, like super minimum wage. So we'll talk about in lesson 3 how we actually had to go to other countries and entice people to come to the United States to build the railroad. And then a lot of those people ended up staying in the United States after building the railroad, which is why our country is so diverse and ethnically and the way we all look, right? All right, so they start building, and let's see if we can do this. So the Union is okay. So Central Pacific Railroad starts from California up and over. So Central is going up and over, and then the Union is starting in Omaha. Omaha sounds like west from Omaha. So Omaha going west towards this way, and then the Central is going this way. So Union Pacific over here, Central Pacific going up and over. And they're just building, 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 and then barely sleeping at night and building, 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 building. Now keep in mind, zero technology, no cranes, no anything, like just really, really menial amount of stuff that they were using to help them build this. So super heavy, middle of nowhere, setting up camps wherever they stopped, and then they'd kind of pick up camp as they continued going. All right. So they're in this race. Central Pacific Railroad obviously was going way slower because they immediately hit the Sierra Nevada. They had to go up and over. Sometimes they had to go through. They had to do dynamite holes and try to make these tunnels that were super dangerous. These guys were like, they were like, woo, we got this. We're just cruising along, flat as can be. So they're going much faster. These guys are going way slower, but they know once they get up and over, it's pretty easy after that. So starting slower, these guys super cocky, confident, like we got this in the bag, right? So it's all over the news, right? They finally decide, okay, Promontory Point in Utah. And if you look at the map on page 290, it actually shows you the path that the two companies took. This map shows the line, and it also shows the meeting point in Utah at Promontory Point. So as it's getting closer and closer, it started getting neck and neck. And the Union Pacific was like, oh, dang, how did they get up and over that so fast? We weren't even building that fast because we thought they had no chance. So they're like, trying to get there. And all these news reporters, newspaper, everybody's waiting at the official meeting point to see who's going to show up first, who's going to build the tracks and get there first. And of course, everyone expected Union Pacific over here to get there first because it was easier. But that didn't happen. Dun, 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 dun. Here comes the Central Pacific up and over. These guys are like, oh, dang, we were taking it easy, kind of like the tortoise and the hare. And they ended up sliding in right before these guys and won the race, which was huge headlines. First of all, Central Pacific won, which nobody expected. Secondly, the railroad is now connecting both sides, manifest destiny, right? And thirdly, these guys were super embarrassed because they weren't really building as fast as they could have because they thought there's no way these other guys are going to get there. So lots of huge things. I mean, this is major, right? So so the company that won, the president of the Central Union Pacific, it was a big photo op. Everybody, kind of got around. You'll see the photo op, the official photo. Let's see, where is that picture? Page 288. So 288, this is a super famous picture that shows some of the workers that worked on it. We'll talk about in lesson 3 how there was a lot of immigrants, Chinese workers that helped build the railroad, and there is not one Chinese person pictured in this picture, which should make you mad. Makes me mad. Okay, so the president of the Central Pacific Railroad, when they got there, they had all the news reporters, photo op, and then they had a golden nail spike. There's a picture of it on page 291 at the top. And it has engraved on it kind of like a trophy you would get that said, winner of the railroad race, Central Pacific Railroad. And just to make it official, he drilled in this gold nail bed thing, or this, what's it called? Rail bed spike. But later they took it out because it was solid gold and they knew that people would take it, right? But the funny part is when he was trying to swing the sledgehammer, and it's a lot harder than it looks, he actually missed. So everybody's watching, and he goes to do it, and he's like, and he misses. Super embarrassing, right? But it shows you these guys were slinging sledgehammers all day long, and he couldn't even do it the first try. It's a little bit embarrassing. So it's all over the news. You now can travel safely from one coast to the other. People were scrambling to buy their railroad tickets. It was supposed to be safe. There was going to be food that was served on board, so you didn't have to starve. So riding the rails, the coast-to-coast trip on the railroad took about a week. So 7 days. Remember with the Pony Express, 10 days, the fastest it could be. So now we're down to 7 days. You don't have to risk your life. There's food involved. I mean, any type of transportation has some danger involved, but overall pretty safe, right? And inside the train, they had a first class section, a second class section, and was there a third or two? No, first class and second class. Now, first class, you had like velvet padded seats. You know, like when on the airplane, the first class seats are a little bit wider and fancier, and you have more room and you get fancy food. First class had velvet padded seats, a little bit more space. They had a special dining car where they would serve you with like real plates and, you know, all fancy. So a first class seat from Omaha to Sacramento to California costs $80, which doesn't seem like a lot, but back then it was a lot. And second class cars had wooden seats, not so comfortable, just like benches. And most of them actually had to eat at railroad stations. So as the train stopped to pick up more people, they'd have to get off the train, go buy food from the railroad station, and then get back on again, which hopefully you don't miss the train. So again, some luxuries. First class, you get to eat on board, you get fancy food. And second class passengers, bring your own food, or when you stop at railroad stations, you can jump off and jump back on again. Now, I want you to notice in the upper right-hand corner on 291, that box is really important. It says, at the same time all this is happening, so the United States has just built the Transcontinental Railroad, super exciting. At the same time, northern states had laws that did not allow slavery. Many people in the southern states believed that they needed enslaved workers to help run their large farms. In 1861, the struggle over slavery led to the Civil War. Now, remember I told you about our country fought each other over slavery. So during this whole time this is happening, the exact same time, Civil War, we're fighting against each other. Crazy. It's kind of like right now, we're dealing with the coronavirus and all that, and now we're dealing with civil unrest and, you know, people protesting, like all at the same time. In 1861, the struggle over slavery led to the Civil War, and in 1865, the North won, which means the no slave people, which is good, and slavery was no longer allowed in the United States. Whew. So a lot going on in the United States, but a lot of good things. I mean, now the North has won the war. Slavery is hopefully not a thing, but it took a while for that to actually stick in. And as we know today, some people have a hard time understanding that the color of your skin, we should not be judged by the outside, but who we are on the inside. And now we have a railroad. So now people can start going from coast to coast. The big four, now they can build whatever they want along the railroad tracks. It's going to help with communication. We're going to set up phone lines along the railroad tracks, so then the first phones are going to start happening. So everything just kind of started going lightning speed after building of the railroad. All right, so what I need you to do is go into your social studies packet. You're going to do lesson 2 questions on your own. Refer back to the text to answer your questions. There's not much text, so it should be easy peasy. Make sure you're using evidence from the text, though, because you don't want to study the incorrect information for the test on Friday. Your final social studies test, Friday. Oh. I will see you all tomorrow. My class, 1 o'clock. Miss Nagde's class, 2 o'clock for our final social studies Zoom. It'll be on lesson 3. So please bring your textbook and bring your chapter review packet, and we will wrap it up. All right, guys. Talk to you later. Bye.